Hi there and welcome to Maverick-Minded Realtors. I'm Jer'Leigh Thompson.
And I'm Casey Smith.
And today we're talking about a topic that I think is getting avoided quite a bit, is are realtors going extinct?
Dun, dun, dun. Dun, dun, dun. I think it's such a hot topic because we have the NAR lawsuits coming on. We have an overabundance of realtors and agents and things like that. So we would like to talk to you about a little bit of the history of the realtor and what the role actually is. And then you want to kind of go off on what the people think we do versus what we really do to give a better picture so you can understand how to convince people that we're needed. How do we sell the value of being a realtor?
Yeah. So Casey did her history lesson last night.
I think this is interesting because let's be honest, anybody can sell or buy real estate without representation. Let's make that very clear. You do not need a realtor to buy and sell. This is a huge misconception. A lot of people think they need one. You don't. Now, there's value in having a realtor, and that's why a lot of people go after for sale by owners or FSBO sellers because they don't have as much exposure, they don't have the tools of a realtor, and that's a huge market to go after.
It is.
But if you look at the role of the realtor in history, it's kind of interesting because the National Associations of Realtors did not even form until around 1908. Now, the first kind of recorded history of agents in existence were in 1890s or so, where there was somebody, probably a gentleman, who saw an opportunity, who knew that real estate was bought and sold through attorneys, through legal deeds and things like that. There was an exchange. And he went door-to-door knocking with these attorneys to convince sellers to have him help buy and sell houses. But he basically went door-to-door to sell his value. He created his own position. So that's actually the history of an agent. Now, really, we don't have much history in writing until NAR came into existence. And they kind of united, let me read this, to unite the real estate men of America for the purpose of effectively exerting a combined influence upon matters affecting real estate interests. So there were people who saw the components involved in real estate, the buying and selling, and started creating a niche of value for consumers and how they could help them do that. One of the oldest brokers in history was out of Chicago, and they actually got into existence because they did the first mortgages. I think the first mortgage was like $5,000. And so they saw an opportunity to not have to pay up front for real estate and how to create a mortgage and lend money. And this is how it got started. What I think is interesting about all of this is that they had to sell their value to the public. And back in the day, they used to basically open up these houses and all of these agents would come by, put their signs in the yard, and they would invite the public to come see this house and they would show all the features. Look at this new electric lighting and look at these nice like curb appeal, whatever it
Indoor
was.
toilets.
Indoor toilets, whatever it was in the early 1900s. And whoever sold the house that day won. There was no exclusive agency. It was just, what do they call them? Curbstoners. Curbstoners. I don't know the pronunciation on that, but that is an actual term of what they were called, and that was kind of the original agents. And it wasn't until 1998 that NAR put out a campaign to educate consumers on why you should use a realtor. So what I got out of all of this was that agents are in sales and marketing, and that they're licensing and rules and regulations really didn't come about until much, much later after NAR existed, and they found a way to solidify their value. If you require a license to do it, if there are certain regulations and property codes that are happening, you need someone to help educate you on what those are.
Well, and it helps protect the consumer as well, because like we just read about the curbstoners, it was a little bit willy-nilly, and people that worked outside the box and didn't always adhere to anybody else's rules but their own.
Exactly. Yeah. And so I think that's super interesting and valuable, and I do think realtors are a very, very valuable thing. But I think what we need to ask ourselves, if we're going extinct or not, is do we still have value in today's market? Because Wild Wild West, before they started creating these regulations, they had to navigate all the different changes and the economic changes. After World War I, a lot of veterans were coming home looking for a home. That's when it really started to kind of flourish, that role. And a lot of women started getting into it as well. And so here we are in 2024. And a lot of people think that the changes in technology and the value of a realtor has shifted. Well, it's always shifted throughout history.
It's constantly shifting. And then, like we were just discussing, whether it's economical or it's tech related or anything like that, every industry is going to feel shifts when it comes to things like this. And so you shift and your role changes slightly. Sometimes it gets better and easier, and sometimes you might get phased out. I do think that there are certain things about our role that will get phased out. Just like before technology, we had to call the broker. Okay, I'm going to come by and pick up keys from that brokerage to go unlock that house. And now I don't have to do that. I don't have to make 3 freaking trips to go get a key in order to unlock a house.
And the MLS used to be only
a book. Yeah, so, you had to pick up a book this thick and flip through it.
And certain people had access to that. And that is where NAR and some of these organizations protected the value of an agent, was because we made things exclusive. It's networking within the different resources you need to buy and sell real estate. And so you needed access. And so it's always been an industry of sales, marketing, and networking. And the question is, in 2024, I would ask you, Jer'Leigh, what is your opinion of what people think we do now versus what we actually do in today's market and in today's scene?
Well, this is something that I've touched on before and you've heard before, but as much as, like, before, a little history, before I got into real estate, I loved HGTV.
Who doesn't?
Oh my gosh, I could binge watch on a Saturday HGTV like nobody's business. And then I got into real estate.
Dreams were shattered.
Yeah, I was like, this is nothing like HGTV. Like, what the heck? And then same thing goes for, whenever I started doing investing. That's a little sidebar, but they make it seem like it's so easy, and
no money, no experience.
Yeah,
you can just do it.
And in 30 days, brand new home, because all the contractors are awesome and they're going to do everything on time and super, super cheap, and it's all going to come in under budget, so all the stuff. It's just, you've been sold a bill of goods, is all I'm saying. And so they've done this industry in particular a terrible disservice, just because that persona, that idea of what we do is constantly being put out there of selling Sunset or selling Miami. And so the conception is, I am doing brunch on a regular basis with my cocktail, and I just closed a big deal and collected, I wish. I was like, I just closed a big deal with a big fat check, and I cannot wait to get my new shoes and matching bag. That's what we're being sold. And so that's what everybody thinks I do, that I've got all this free time, I'm constantly vacationing, and I'm selling massive homes by just opening a door. And that it's cookie cutter. That's one of the things that I've heard a million times since this NAR settlement, is that it's cookie cutter, you shouldn't be paid for it. And I was like, well, a divorce can be cookie cutter for the right people. But I don't see you not hiring an attorney, because most people aren't made up that way, right?
Well, you put on, what I think is interesting to note is people are very different. And this is a people industry, because there's a lot of emotion attached with one of the largest assets most people buy and own, and an asset class that builds a lot of wealth. So there's a lot of emotion, there's a lot of family, there's a lot of things that happen, and no two transactions are the same. I personally have overseen over 6,500 transactions, and I can tell you I'm surprised every single day. Whether it be
all
the time. You learn more about economics and people and problem solving than any other industry. So you really do have to be a jack of all trades when it comes to being a realtor, because you can go in and be an expert at marketing and throw the party at the open house and put all the marketing in the magazine and sell the house, or help the buyer look at a bunch of houses and help guide them on the cost of renovating or what it's going to look like for them. But you also have to deal with problems on title, chains of title, heirs, situations, property codes, a lot of different unique things. And I think that is something that is not covered.
Repairs. In general, I mean, that can be a deal killer during the negotiation of the repairs, at the completion of repairs, at closing when they do a final walkthrough, because their version in their mind of what that should have looked like and the version in the seller's mind are
two different worlds apart.
Right. A good example of that is one of my favorite things to do is negotiate repairs. maybe because we run crews and we know costs of things and whatnot. But I think one of the biggest things that if you want to stand out in this industry, it's know construction costs and what it looks like and what's important, what's not, what's grandfathered code and what's not. Because a lot of people don't. The amount of times I've had realtors copy and paste an inspection report as their repair amendments, or say, hey, let us know what they're going to fix.
Don't do that.
Don't do that.
Don't do that.
So if we're going to look at what a realtor should know and do, no matter if you're helping a buyer or helping a seller, you need to know things like that. It's more than just the marketing and the sales at this point if you're going to represent somebody.
And if you don't know, just network or partner with somebody who does. Like, you don't have to know all of this stuff. I get that it's daunting. You know, if you're a new realtor, you're not going to walk into this and then all of a sudden, like, just know construction costs and know how to negotiate. And what are the big ticket items? What are the non-negotiables? And what are the kind of fluff? You're not going to know that right off the bat. So partner or get a mentor or get somebody who does know so that you're not making those mistakes and you do provide that value.
Yeah, I would say honestly, whether you choose to work with buyers or work with that realm or not, absolutely just shadow somebody. Find a fix and flipper. Find somebody that goes in, asks to look at their crews, look at how they do things. I personally shadowed an inspector when I first got started. I asked him if I could just follow him around, see what he inspects, how he inspects. He was really great to learn from because
that's a really good idea.
I would ask him, why would you do that? And is this important or not? Now, some inspectors are going to scare people a lot and some aren't. It just depends on their experience as well. And so their job is to point out things that are wrong. So
and to CYA. They do a lot of CYA. So keep that in mind as well.
Exactly. And so it's super important that you know how to also be the middleman between your inspector and your client, because they're going to freak them out and they're going to want to talk to them, and you're probably going to need to set the expectation that that's their job. And then you need to build the trust with your client that you're able to guide them, that they aren't telling you what to do, but trust you to tell them what to do.
Because there's definitely a difference whenever you're dealing, especially when we're talking about inspections. When you're dealing with the inspector and you're trying to negotiate those repairs and you're walking your client through it, especially when you're dealing with the buyer, but you're walking that client through it, you don't want them to feel like you're pushing them into buying a property. You want to make sure that they're comfortable with your knowledge and expertise, that you know that replacing all the windows is fluff just because there's a broken seal. That's fluff.
I had that happen recently.
Even though they think that it's absolutely important because it showed up on the inspection report, that is not important. You know, what's important is that electrical panel that's in the closet. That's important. You know, I mean, there's certain things that are more important than others, and again, setting those expectations.
Yeah, so I know we kind of dialed in on one little piece of the things that we do. It's just something that's been on my mind a lot just because it's been coming up a lot. We lose deals just because people get freaked out, and I'm thinking to myself, that cost a few $100s. We would have changed that, and they didn't even ask for the repair. And I've had to have a conversation with the realtor and say, what happened here? And she was actually in agreement with me. And so my impression of that realtor was you didn't have the trust of your client, unfortunately.
Yeah, and you couldn't articulate, like, to back them off that ledge. And I just had one the same day of closing show up. It had been raining all day. And they asked us to do a plumbing test on a pier and beam, not to get super, you know, dialed in on this.
Granular?
But granular on this, but plumbing test on the on that property, make sure there's no leaks, because when they did the inspection, it had been raining and there was water underneath the house. And we did it, and then we took pictures of the dry underneath. Then they went back whenever it had been raining. And they're like, oh, no, it's going to flood. The house is going to flood, and y'all didn't do the repair. And I was like, what repair? It's raining. Like, it's literally raining outside. There is nothing for us to do. Well, sorry, we see water. Y'all didn't take care of it.
Right.
And I'm just like, what in the world is going on here? But that's inexperience on the other agent's side, not being able to talk sense, like real sense.
And troubleshoot.
Yeah, and troubleshoot this. You know, why would you take them out there the day that it's been raining torrential all day and expect for it to be dry under a pier and beam home? It's not. going to, you know, I mean, but that's the lack of experience, you know.
Definitely. So I would say one of the top things in summary that you should know is at least learn the basics of follow an inspector. You need to know, I think that's probably the biggest value right now because a lot of homeowners don't know the costs of things. And let's be honest, if you are a realtor with good resources, you're going to have vendors that cost half the amount of other vendors because you do business with them or do repeat. So I would say your relationship with contractors and inspectors and knowing how that works is going to be a huge value add in this day and age as a realtor. And I really don't see that going away because
that's definitely not going to go away.
They're relying on the inspectors whose job is to just tell them what's wrong, not necessarily help them make sense of that information.
Yes.
So that's going to be a huge one. And then you have down on here, obviously you're going to facilitate a transaction. You're essentially a transaction coordinator. Yep. There's paperwork, lots of paperwork. And these days, you have to know what the inspection periods are, what timelines are, when you need to verify financing contingencies, if lenders are involved. So you do need to have a lot of knowledge of the transaction. You need to know what paperwork's needed and the very, very critical deadlines to protect your clients, especially if earnest money is involved. And
that's on the buyer and seller side.
Absolutely.
I mean, it doesn't matter what side of the transaction you're on.
And I think people forget this in real estate. Everything's negotiable. Everything. So you're not going to have the same terms all the time. There's a certain way to do things. I'll never forget, I had a brokerage that taught me how to write a contract as a buyer's agent and how to write a contract as a listing agent. And then they also taught me how to write a contract as an investor, not represented. And it wasn't that they were being they said your interest change depending on what your role is, whether you're a principal in the transaction, whether you're representing a seller or a buyer. And so knowing how to protect your client is going to be key. So
100%.
You definitely need to know all the little things of your state promulgated contracts and know where those are. For the Texas contract, I would say option fees and periods and things like that.
Financing.
Financing periods and types of financing are huge. The best realtors that I know are going to absolutely know all the loan types. Even as a listing agent, I am calling the lenders of the buyers. I am reaching in with them, understanding their process, their timelines, as well as what kind of loan they're doing, what kind of appraisals.
You're definitely in contact with a lot of people and keeping up with that transaction completely. So it's just one of those things that you definitely... That is a huge point whenever it comes to, even though you're just filling out the contract, there's different ways to fill it out.
Ways to do it. And knowing what to look for. If you're a listing agent that is going to accept a contract, I am looking at very particular things. Little things like knowing if they're sneaking in something in special provisions, or if they're choosing a longer time frame for less amount of money on an option period. You know, those are the types of things I negotiate before I even bring them to my clients a lot because I know what they want. Yeah. And that doesn't waste my clients' time because now they don't have to ask me. I know what they want. I know what I'm going to negotiate, and then I'm going to bring it to them and see if they want to negotiate anything further. So we have understanding things on the houses and inspections. We've got transaction coordinating, and then one of the big things you always talk about is marketing.
Yeah, marketing is huge. I mean, because 90% of your business as an agent is marketing, whether it's an agent or even as an investor. If you're trying to gather properties, if you're trying to invest in properties, then you're marketing yourself that, yes, I'm an investor, or yes, I'm a realtor, or I list investor homes, or whatever. But you're marketing 90% of your job. You're selling. So,
and you got to get creative.
Yes, you do, to stand out.
Something I've learned too is, as a realtor, you really need to know what type of buyer you're looking for too. If you're on the listing side of things, and I'm speaking from this perspective because that's my main core. Yeah. But people don't realize is you're going to get offers from all sorts of different types of people that are going to range big time. If you don't understand the type of buyer that can buy that home, so for example, are you selling a home that can qualify for a government loan? Are you in a price point where you're going to get first-time home buyers? Are you in an as-is property that needs a ton of work? What kind of cash buyer are you looking for? Like those types of nuanced things are really going to give you an edge on who you market to, and what kind of material and what types of groups you're going to.
And what kind of price point you're going to end up settling on, because that's another thing. Even though you've got the comps that you're doing, you've got to keep those things in mind.
Absolutely. And I've got land is a really big one right now. A lot of people want to put land on the MLS, but builders genuinely want those off the MLS. And so knowing those types of things are really going to make or break you as a realtor, I think, or at least bringing the value to the clients that you're trying to get.
But our goal here was to show you what people think we do versus what we do. Hopefully that sheds a little bit of light.
Yes.
But be sure to tune in. We'll dive a little bit deeper on all of this stuff. But tune in, like, share, and follow. And we appreciate y'all joining us today.
Thank you so much.